Hello, and welcome to an outline and evaluation of the GP Research Fellows in the current Clinical Research Network of Wessex, but what will be South Central Research Delivery Network. And this evaluation was done by Jan Westbury at Southampton University Hospitals Trust. And I thank Martin Cross, who's been doing a lot of work with the GP Research Fellows, along with Patrick and Nick, who've been supporting us. I'm going to talk about the 4 Portfolio GP Research Fellows. These are post-CCT, and they are portfolio because they're doing general practice alongside their research fellow placement. There are also 2 GP-ST Research Fellows, and the results of the evaluation are relevant to them, but they are slightly different in that they are funded by Health Education England and they are pre-CCCT. So they are before qualifying as GPs. They have 2 sessions a week and they are based more in their GP research practice than the other portfolio GP fellows. So I'm going to talk about the research fellows generally, first of all, and then focus on the portfolio GP research fellows post-CCT. And the aims in 2022, when we set up these posts, were to provide a clinical research career pathway as distinct from the academic research pathway. Now, there needs to be an increase in numbers for academic GPs, but there also needs to be an increase in numbers for those interested in general practice research and working part or full-time as a GP. So it's a clinical career pathway. And we're establishing this starting in the vocational training schemes, and then these GP research fellows carry on as portfolio GP research fellows. And they could be for people who've just qualified or on mid-career or near the end of their career. The aim is to increase research delivery. And when we tried similar posts in the past, we were aware that it doesn't always increase research delivery. Sometimes if it's add-on, it just helps with workload rather than increasing delivery. And this was an important criteria for CRN Wessex as it is now. We also wanted to build leadership and future research capacity because that is quite important in our area. We want to increase the activity within primary care and general practice. We looked at the sessions, and what we're trying to do is tailor these research fellow posts to the GP and their current working pattern. We want to fit around them so that we're encouraging them to take up these posts and look at ways of developing research around their work. We offered up to 5 sessions a week, but all of our applicants chose 3 sessions a week, of which 2 we stipulated should be consecutive sessions in the same research environment. In this case, the research hubs, which were developing after COVID within the Wessex area. And the 3rd session was therefore used a bit more flexibly, could often be in the research practice, and could be a time for supervision. And supervision was also an important part of this, as well as tailoring it to the GP for their career in general practice. We wanted to have good supervision. We wanted to have supervision from a research general practice and for them to be attached to a research general practice on the basis that it would often be in a practice that they worked in, which wasn't necessarily research. We wanted them to link in with an academic program, and this was run on Fridays at lunchtime by Nick Francis. And we wanted them to have an academic mentor who would be able to link in with them to give advice. And our aim was for them to be seeing a supervisor every 2 weeks. It would either be their GP research supervisor or their academic supervisor, and they would effectively be monthly, but overall that would lead to a 2 weekly supervision session. We also wanted to have supervisors for each session, and these are all good educational principles that apply to any educational post. to have somebody you can go to during that particular session to get advice on the clinical setting, or in this case, advice on the research queries that are there. And the program leads were there as a backup to oversee. And in a couple of cases, we stepped in to help and coordinate, as well as check that the records of research activity and learning were taking place and being shared. The evaluation carried out by Jan Westbury showed that there were three main themes: that it was indeed a supportive and flexible program, that it was delivering research, and it was enhancing personal and professional development. The report includes a background statement about it being a pilot program for those who've completed training, because we're looking at the 4 post-CCT fellows, and who want to work as clinical researchers alongside the clinical work to develop their skills. We appointed 4 GP research fellows. There were more applicants, and there are people who remain interested in the next set of posts in the hope they arrive. And it was a competitive process, and they were given 12 months from April 2023. Following the success of the post, they were offered a further 3 months each, and each of the fellows has some form of ongoing research involvement, and one of them has taken an extension to the GP Research Fellow post. The evaluation was done by a survey with the GP Research Fellows, and there were qualitative interviews with the GP Research Fellows and the academic mentors, the hub supervisors, the GP supervisors, and program leads. That didn't involve all supervisors, but was a sample of those. It involved all the GP Research Fellows who were portfolio post-CCT. That's 4 of them. You'll see here the graphic presentation of the responses. I would like to be able to name all our fellows and say how well done to all of them, but because I'm presenting results, I won't be doing that on this occasion. But you can see the details on the Wessex CRM website. They all enjoyed their fellowship and they would recommend it. And they felt that their interest in research was nurtured and ongoing. Interestingly, they didn't comment on academic research being so, or they commented, but they felt academic research wasn't so much furthered. And the aim of this post was to get them into clinical setting and research delivery. So that fitted with the aims, but it's something we could develop further. Supervision, they felt that there was good supervision in the different settings. But there's a question about the frequency of supervision and whether this was met. As you see, in the top half was quality of supervision, bottom half is about frequency of supervision. And as indicated, they weren't intended to be seeing the GP program leads unless there was problems. And so they stepped in a couple of times to make sure there was good supervision and learning log. So what we want to do is make sure that we circulate the handbook and circulate details about the timing of supervision and the frequency of supervision so that that takes place regularly. We had documentation, a research record of research activity and learning. And this had a personalized education plan within it. And it maintained a record of learning, and it maintained a record of research activities that we could summarize at the end to show what had taken place in the way of research delivery. And it had a work plan within it. There was a timetable, and there was a set of objectives laid out as discussed. And we had details of each supervisor there with their contact information, so that the document provided a summary for those supervisors. Not all supervisors saw the document and not all supervisors saw the handbook, so we've got to improve the cascade down to them to ensure this takes place. Key recommendations which apply to anyone who's setting up similar posts across the country are which days of the week are the best week. For collection of specimens, Friday can be a problem day. So bear that in mind. Monday can be a busy day within a practice. So to some extent, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are always good educational days. But of course, they overlap with vocational training. So bear that in mind if you're looking at pre-CCT. There was requests to strengthen the clinical supervision and communication, and this was about cascading down the handbook and the log to ensure that everybody knew supervision was required each month, which worked out as 2 weekly for the GP fellows. And further development of the learning log was suggested with highlighting of the review dates that were there. And again, this was about disseminating and telling people about the log rather than developing it itself. So the logs worked well. The logs were in Word file, but some fellows converted it to an Excel file. So we've got both versions available. One of the good things about the posts was that if it was quiet in one area, the GP fellows could move to another area. So they were predominantly based in the hubs post-CCT. And these 4 post-CCT fellows in the hubs, when it was quiet there, they could move across to the GP research practice. Or they could move into the academic setting with the School of Primary Care and the university. Or they could do research introduction into their own general practices. And initially, it was unclear how to move about and do this because the contacts weren't in place. But towards the end of the year, all fellows were moving around to the place of highest activity. And when the hub became active again with a new research project, they moved back to the hub. Towards the end of the posts, they were also setting up research within their own general practices. These were research naive practices. And effectively, there were some 4 new research practices set up by this mechanism. There was a potential for placement in acute trusts, but there's a question of whether there's enough time within 3 sessions to do this. But it is an option, and it would increase the networking and education about the system. And it was suggested that principal investigator training should take place within the first 6 to 8 weeks if the person hasn't done it already. In practice, everybody either had done it or took it up as they did the research fellow post. Educational experience, our aim was to get research delivery experience. And this particular question looked at the overall process of developing research projects or getting approval, of getting Health Research Authority involvement, MHRA, and use of Gantt charts for planning and so forth. So it looks like we could strengthen this and help with a clearer academic program to do that. But having said that, the academic program dealt with a lot of that. So it was more a question of whether you push the hands-on designer projects or whether you push the delivery. So this related to the whole research journey, and they suggested time in the research and development office as well, research and design, so that you could see the whole process of developing a study. As there was a tension, if you like, between research delivery and developing your own study. And some developed their own study in the when the research delivery was quiet. So running those in parallel is possible. And that involved joining the academic research team more. So that's another possibility. Development of educational materials and handbook, well, that was in process, but it was a question of dissemination was the key thing. And we want to develop educational materials much more and coordinate them across all the different specialties. Career advice was stated as important at the start, but towards the end, it was apparent that it had to be tailored more to the individual and include areas like how to obtain funding. It was mentioned during the programme, but we could strengthen it towards the end. And we plan to award a certificate of completion for all the research fellows. So in conclusion, the research fellows strongly recommend the programme to others. And all 4 plan to continue with research delivery as a GP with research interest. And it was intriguing that research delivery became their priority, with the option to move into academic research if they wanted to at any point. Quotes included, I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I think research is set up well for GPs, I think, compared to specialists. I think it works well as a career alongside it. And for me, that's a really nice bit of feedback, because the problem had been that we had a good setup within secondary care for research fellows, but we hadn't got research fellows in primary care. So we've managed that. And the funding, by the way, for this has come partly from the research hubs and funding from the programs that were coming into the research hubs, mostly vaccination programs, but they will be expanding. And also from primary care funds that effectively had been moved across to secondary care each year. But in this time, we retain them within primary care to fund the GP fellows. So we've talked about some of these outcomes. We've seeded new GP research practices within the area. We've set up some leadership. We've got an enthusiastic body of research GPs established. We have enhanced research delivery, and we're going to be looking further at the figures to look at the local areas and demonstrate how much that has increased. And we have enthusiastic, skilled research leads now established in 4 areas from the portfolio post-CCT, and we also have 2 established in hard to reach areas as part of the vocational training scheme that I mentioned earlier. So thank you for listening. If you have any further queries, do come back to me. These are national examples which could be used and applied in other settings. We hope to get further portfolio GP Research Fellow funding. And we can see that Health Education England should continue, I hope, funding for the GP ST Research Fellows, those in vocational training. And don't forget, we have an apprenticeship, academic apprenticeship for GPs who have an interest in research and just want to sit in with an academic team to see how it's done and develop their skills, perhaps leading into a portfolio GP Research Fellow post. So if you have questions, do email me at the address at nhs.net. There is a website you can go to which is mainly educational, but we'll have future references to that. And don't forget to look at other YouTube videos on the site in addition to this one. Thank you for listening. Do get in touch if need be.